Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, your host, and I am so excited about this conversation. It is cutting edge. I'm so pleased to be introducing you to Corey Sanchez. He is somebody that I have met who just understands energy. Corey, thank you so much for saying yes and being on the show.
Oh, thank you for the invitation, Sarah. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually really excited for this conversation as well.
I am, yes. So tell me how you got into the energetic world, because this is not where you began, friend.
Oh, no, not even close. So I ended up in the energetic world basically because about 10 years ago, I became an entrepreneur. I had been working in the food and beverage, the hospitality industry for well over 20 years at that point in time. And it had been an accidental career, not something that I thought that I would actually end up being in for that long. I think probably a lot of people can relate to that kind of a situation. But yeah, right. Yourself included, right?
Yeah.
But if you've ever worked in that industry, you'll understand that it is kind of its own unique world. And unfortunately, there is a lot of very negative and toxic energy that's inside of there. Sometimes it can be a really beautiful and amazing place where, restaurants and whatnot, all these places come together to support each other when things are rough. If somebody's having a rough time, they can step in and, everybody kind of has each other's back. But then also there's the whole other side of the coin. And when you're in there for that long, you start to realize that a lot of the conversations that you're having are not very positive, and they're not very uplifting, and they're not really making you feel good. And so I kind of come to a realization that I didn't think I wanted to be in that industry really any longer, just because I wasn't going anywhere. I kind of had stagnated. I hit a point where nothing was really moving forward, and I didn't see a future there. And I was getting close to my 40s, and I was thinking to myself, I've got to make a change sooner rather than later. But I had no idea what I was going to do. I did end up with an opportunity, right, to work with the firm that I am now, helping teach people how money works and doing those kind of things. But when I first came into the firm, it became quickly and very apparent that the people I was going to be around were completely different than what I was used to. And I tell this story that I was bartending at the airport here in Denver when I first kind of started to transition part-time. And so I had an hour on the bus ride to the airport and an hour on the bus ride back, right? And so I'd get on my phone and I'd open up the USA Today or the Denver Post app, right? And just by even doing that, I kind of had a higher identity than most of the people around me, because they weren't even trying to stay in touch with the world around them. And then I move into this space where I'm surrounded by all these people that have been doing all of this work on themselves for years, and they're operating at such a high level that it was, frankly, at the beginning, it was very intimidating and actually really discouraging. I mean, it was bad at first, because I could never see myself being like them, because there was such a big gap, right? But that was the wonderful thing about people that live in that space and that have done that work, is that while most of the time, they've got one hand reaching up, working with a mentor or somebody that's helping pull them along, at the same time, they've got one hand reaching back, right? And they're grabbing you, and they're helping pull you, and they're helping move you forward. So I got very, very lucky that I had some people that, in my opinion, spent way more time than they should have, and way more energy than they should have, just helping me break out of that very beginning of the victim mentality and the scarcity mindset, right? And all of that. And it took me about 2 years to really start to see some big shifts.
Yeah.
But what I had noticed was, along the way, even if I wasn't seeing the results, I was really loving the work. I loved the idea of changing. The prospect of that next version of yourself and the next version of yourself became really, really exciting, because at one point there was a piece that clicked, and I went, I'm no longer scared of the change, because even though I liked who I was before, I'm really excited to see who I'm going to be in this next one. And the only things that fall away when you make the shift to that next version of yourself are the things that don't serve you, that don't move you forward. Everything good stays with you.
Yes.
And everything that falls away is the stuff that was holding you back, right? It's a continual process. You and I both know that we're never done with this.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. But, and then I was able to, from there, start to find some coaches. my own, a little aside here, it's odd. I have found that I tend to work much better with female coaches. Women who tend to only coach other women as kind of a rule have always made exceptions to work with me, and I've seemed like I've always gotten the best results and the most out of working with female coaches. So that's been an interesting thing for me to kind of try and figure out why that energy connects so well for me.
Yes.
But yeah, so like I said, I started that journey about 10 years ago. One of the things that I love hearing is the people that have known me for so long recognizing that old you would have never reacted to a situation like this before, right? It's so amazing to see the way that you think differently now, and that you don't immediately always go to the worst case scenarios, and you don't always get upset, and you don't always end up in those negative places. And then you and I were talking a little bit before, this last year has been really, really transformative to figuring out some boundary stuff, which actually I figured out was rooted back to self-worth. And that's where you're able to figure out, what is it that's actually most important to you, and to hold those promises to yourself. And by doing so, you inevitably start to create those points that you won't go past in relationships, right? Those things that you say, this is the stopping point.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit about my journey on how I got here.
So incredible. And I think it's also so amazing as you are sharing this story about how you were, I don't know that you had a bunch in the bank ready for you to make this change, right? And so this also the belief in yourself that you could move out of, I know when I was working in food service that it was paycheck to paycheck.
Oh yeah.
And I'm so grateful for the time that I did that, because I learned so much about so much. There are incredible systems that work behind the scenes to make the food happen, to make all of those pieces happen in such a way that when somebody shows up and says, hey, I'm hungry, can I order X? They're able to get whatever the X happens to be. And so I was so grateful for those experiences, and to watch the people who would come in way before the sun would ever start to rise, right? That they were there already at work every single day, consistently loving on what they were doing, and that was their gift to the world, was to help feed other people. So I'm so grateful for that. Grateful that my adult daughter also had experiences in food service. I just think it's a great place for people to start to have these experiences. I think it's really helpful because it gives you the opportunity to be in contact with all kinds of people. So much so that recently, when I was traveling and somebody out of the blue just walked up to me and began complaining, I found it amusing. I chose to not smile. I chose to not feed into the energy, but internally I just thought, oh my gosh, that's just so incredible that she knows nothing about me, knows nothing about who I am. And what she's complaining about, as soon as she turns the corner, she's going to see is no longer true. And then is she going to apologize or say something to herself about how, well, today's different, right? I mean, where was she in her mindset? And I think that being in food service gives an opportunity to meet all kinds of people. And for that alone, I'm so grateful, because as I work in the energetic world, I see energies that I don't know if I have the words to perfectly explain this, but energies that are similar to that lady who walked by me and had things to say. And I don't have to necessarily engage with all of them. I don't have to necessarily have a conversation or try to fix or offer a solution. I can just be there. I can just witness. And what a difference that is compared to the version of Sarah, 40 years ago, where I'd feel like I needed to get in there and fix things. And I don't need to do that.
Yeah, that's so much great stuff. And just that, what you were saying there, going back to at the very beginning, like you said, money is energy, right?
Yes.
I think we're finally starting to understand that, just kind of as a society, and then, as a whole.
Yes.
But a big thing that I realized now was I had a terrible relationship with money because of things that happened in the past, right? When you grow up, things that you can't control have, unfortunately, an amazing ability to imprint on you and then control the way that you think for the rest of your life. They say most of, 80% of our thoughts and beliefs are in place by age 8. And I think by 12, like 90% of them are there. And then if you don't know where they come from, you can't go back and change them. And you talk about paycheck to paycheck. There were times where I was shift to shift, where it was literally working places where I would try and make enough money on a Wednesday night to be able to buy gas and get groceries and whatnot, to get to Thursday, same kind of thing. And then to get to Fridays and Saturdays and where you would make big money, and then you would go pay your bills, and anything you had left over, instead of being responsible, throwing them in the bank and building that so you didn't go through it the next week, you would just go spend the rest of it because, right. And for me, like I said, a lot of that was just my personal relationship with money was really unhealthy at the time. But then shifting to, that's part of why, when I made the shift out of the service industry, that was a big part of it, is I thought to myself, I have to get better at this, and I need to figure out what I should be doing. And I just luckily happened to find a firm that teaches that, right? That's what we do, is we give that education, and then we help people build those roadmaps to go where they want to go. And so it was almost like one of those divine moments where you don't know what you're looking for, but as soon as you see it, you're like, that's exactly what I wanted. Right. And it all came together like that. And I feel very, very, very fortunate and blessed and grateful that was there. But again, yes, I interacted with a ton of different people, especially working at an international airport. I mean, we saw people on their best days and their worst days on a regular basis. Yes. I worked in the last place that I worked out there, I was at that for 9 years. And when we first opened, it was the only place on the concourse where you could smoke. Oh. Yeah. And I would open sometimes. And my opening shift was, I had to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when the bar opened.
Yes.
And at 5:30, we'd have 30 people standing outside waiting for us to open the gate so they could rush in and smoke 4 or 5 cigarettes and then rush off to their gate. And you can imagine what that kind of energy was, where they were already agitated and annoyed, and and then they had to buy something in order to be in there. So exactly. Then you're telling them you have to spend money too, and they're just, and of course you're not the one that makes the policy. You're just the one that has to pass along the news, but guess who gets all of the energy pointed at them. Right. And I love what you were saying there. This, as we grow and we become more aware of everything around us, we also understand that we can acknowledge, and acknowledge, but not interact with everything around us, which is a whole game changer, right? Because all of a sudden you start realizing it's my energy. I control how I want to use it. And this is not a purpose that I feel there's any value in interacting with. So you just go ahead and I'll just let it wash right by me, right? And then you go off, and hopefully that got enough off your chest that you can calm down and your mind slows down, and you can start to,
right,
like you said, think about, oh man, should I go back and apologize? Even if they don't, if that thought hits their mind, that's great.
Exactly.
Right. Because it's okay. Now there's a little bit of awakening. Now there's a little bit of awareness going on that, oh, maybe I overreacted or I took it out on somebody that didn't deserve it. But that was a big part for me of shifting away from that victim mindset, because the victim mindset made me want to always, I needed the validation. I needed to get in there and I needed to fix it. I needed to interact with it. I needed to show that I was valuable. Right.
Yes.
So that they would say something to me about how great I was, so then I could feel better about myself, as opposed to just knowing that you're great on your own, right? And you don't always have to be involved with everything going on around you.
I love that idea of moving from victim to valuable. I think, and I truly believe it's internal work. And I have experienced working with people that they had incredible parents who told them how valuable they were, but somewhere along the line, they stopped believing it, or they struggled with that internal conversation. The internal conversation became much louder than anything that they had ever heard, anything that teachers had imprinted on them positively, anything that they had seen of their own self-worth. And sometimes it happens with a trauma experience. Sometimes it happens with having a friend group that you perhaps fall into, seeing that you aren't with the ones that you want to be. So you just kind of, better to have some friends than no friends at all. Whatever that trajectory happens to be, of realizing that we do have choices, of coming to that awakening, of saying, wait a minute, I know that I can sense things around me and not everybody reacts the same way that I do. And I'm going to choose to look and find heroes in my life or heroines in my life that choose a different path. And, you know, Corey, if it's true, and I believe it is, that we become like the 5 people that we spend the most time with, those 5 people don't need to be people that I'm actually able to have conversations. They don't even need to be alive today. I just need to be interacting with their work. I need to be
100%.
immersing myself with their words and their thought process, and sit and ask questions and find empowering questions that I can be asking of how can I more easily bring this information into my life and integrate it and implement it in such a way that I see the fruits in my life the same way that they saw in their life. I also think that in our current conversation in a large part of the world, that there's this idea that success equals money in the bank. And I'm not going to deny that at all. I also think that success can look like so many other things as well. And I would love for you as a money person to speak about what success looks like, because you're right. There's a part of this energetically that is completely about money, is energy, but there's also, I think, a part of it of who we identify with or how we identify.
Absolutely. 100% agreeing with everything you just said. And yeah, a success for a lot of people initially when you're just starting out, right? Or you haven't had a lot of success, or you aren't well off financially. Money is very, very often like that low-hanging fruit. That's the once I make a certain amount a year, or I can afford, a nicer apartment, or a better car, or whatever.
Right.
That's their first marker of success.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never deny that money makes life easier. It just does. It
gives you options.
Yes, exactly right. And I had to change my mindset around my worthiness of money because of a lot of that stuff for parents, right? You mentioned parents, and I had a situation where when I was young, my parents, for better or worse, probably should have not actually been a couple. I'm glad they were because I'm here. But
Yeah.
I look back, right, and there was not the greatest relationship there. There was a lot of conflict and whatnot. And as a young child, I internalized that as that I was the root of both of them being unhappy, because I could kind of feel like they didn't really belong together, but they were trying to make it work because of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, when they had separated and divorced, and I was living with my mom, I watched my mom work full time and then go back to school, try and get a degree so she could provide a better life. And again, so money was in tight supply back then, right? And all I can think of is I'm costing money, right? So I had, like I said, a very unhealthy relationship there. And then you have to start changing that to, no, that was something that you didn't have the framework to process properly. And so the belief itself isn't true. It's very deeply rooted, but it's not true. Yes. So you have to change that. And then once you can do that, and then you can have enough money in the bank that you feel comfortable, that you're not stressed, you sleep at night. We talk about the analogy on the airline, right? When the oxygen mask comes down, what do they tell you to do?
Put it on yourself first.
Exactly, right? Because you can't help others if you are incapacitated. So that's how I look at money. Is money just allows you then to be of more service, right? Money for money's sake, I'm not a fan of that. Money for the ability to go out and to be of more value, more service, that I can get behind. And for me, once I was able to kind of shift the attitude around money, then I can start finding those other core values, those other core commitments that I love. And for me, being of service is a huge one. I think I found my path where I'm at now because it allows me to do that. That's at the heart of everything I do, is going out and aiding others, helping others, right? And so like you were saying, it's you get to a point once money's kind of out of the way that you can start to see, what does success really mean to me? And sometimes that's, I don't want to worry about going to the grocery store and having to figure out what the price on the shelf is if I can put it in the cart, right? A friend of mine once told me, he's like, I can't wait for the day that I can go to Whole Foods and just put whatever I want in the cart and walk up to the checkout and just go through. Yep. Right. And for him, that was success. So the day that he was able to do that, that was perfect. Somebody else, was like, I want to be able to make enough money that I can go volunteer to build schools in Africa.
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Great. I don't know how much money that is, but once you're there and you can do that for them, that was success because they're like, I'm on the ground, I'm doing something, I'm building
Yeah.
something, I'm physically creating something here that will serve others, right?
Yes.
And that's success can look like a lot of different things, but really for me, what it is it's what allows you to live in a place of joy, right? Because
Mm.
joy is so unique and so amazing and unfortunately really rare in most people's lives. And it's something that I think if more people could actually understand joy, right? Just, and to me, that's kind of like joy is the being in love with the process of just your life every day, right? It doesn't always look pretty. It's not always technically how you want things to work out, but you always love being in the middle of whatever it is that you're doing.
Corey, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation about joy, and then also what advice you have to give people who are feeling like they don't have enough joy in their life. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Sarah Stockham. Recently, we were doing some renovation work, and as we were doing all of the decorating, the color blue, specifically cobalt, kept showing up for me in different areas in different ways. And I thought, what I really want is a signature piece that is in cobalt. So I went to Glass Arts Collective and found this amazing piece. I absolutely love it. In fact, when it arrived, my husband wanted it. It is so beautiful. It's nice and heavy. It was perfectly packaged. So when it came, there was no concern at all about if it was going to show up all right or not. I love that it's handmade. I love that it's unique. And I invite you to go to the glassartscollective.com and go shopping. Pick something up for yourself. Pick up some gifts for others. I know that you will enjoy how beautiful the work is. We're having an incredible conversation with Corey, who's sharing with us ideas about how he moved, in his words, from victim into being valuable, from working from paycheck to paycheck into a space of joy. And as we're having this conversation, Corey, I would love for you to share a bit more about joy and then advice for people who are wanting to have more joy in their life.
Yeah. I think kind of started thinking about joy a little bit differently, and this may sound a little odd. Matthew McConaughey was the one that kind of got me thinking this way. He has a speech out there called "This Is Why You're Not Happy," and I think it might have been part of either like a commencement address or an awards show acceptance speech or something. And he talks about, and by the way, if you've never read his book Green Lights, it's fantastic. I highly recommend you go check that out too. But in it, he starts talking about how when he was chasing goals and dreams, right? He wanted to win an Oscar or these kind of things, that he would work really hard. And then if he got to his goal, it'd feel great for a moment. And then we all know what happens, right? You have this massive drop off after you hit your goal because you worked so hard and it meant so much and you attached so much meaning to doing that as soon as you hit it,
Yes.
you kind of look around and you're like, what now? Right? Like all my entire being has been dedicated to getting to here, and now I'm here and I don't know what the next step is. And so you can have a really big come down off of that, right? And then you have to go set an even bigger one, and you have to set an even bigger one, and eventually they kind of get harder and harder to hit, and then you hit that cycle of beating yourself up because it's not happening and that stuff. And he talked about as soon as he stopped chasing those and he just fell in love with the process of what he did every day, right? Of just being in love with that. Is where it allowed him to start living in a space of joy. And joy is different than happiness. Joy is
Yes.
right.
Yes.
And a lot of people equate the two, and
they're not the same.
They're not the same. And joy is such an elevated, higher level of energy than happiness is.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so for me, I kind of break it down. I always say it's journey over destination. It's process over product.
Yes.
Right. So for me to find more joy in your life, you need to figure out what it is that you love to do and then figure out how to make that part of your everyday life. And sometimes that can be your career. Other times it can be something on the side, but it's something where the end result isn't really the focus. It's the just being in the work on a regular basis.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does to me. Yes, absolutely. And I think for the entrepreneurs and the leaders who are listening into this conversation and watching, I think that part of the process is to take some time and to listen to the feedback that people are giving you, because people will tell you, oh, you look happier or you seem more joyous, right? So part of it is the feedback, but part of it's also just the internal watching where the line is for how much energy you have. The things that I enjoy doing, I have more energy for them. The things that I find more challenging or less fun to do, things that don't necessarily line up energetically with me, but I still need to do, I find those things are the ones that I calendar for 15 minutes at a time. Because they aren't so fun. I still need to, get all the paperwork together to do taxes, right? I mean, these are things that happen every single year. It's on my calendar. I put chunks of time in so that I get it done. I can listen to my voice now and I can tell you, it's like, oh yeah, I have to do that. It's an important part of being a citizen. Yes. But my voice changes. But when I talk about the show or being able to be with people like you and having these elevated conversations, and how can we encourage other people? How can we be reaching out and say, come along with us. The journey is worth it. And you may not have people around you applauding, but we're here to tell you the journey is worth it. And we're how do we find more people and more conversations to be able to have these conversations, and so that more people are encouraged around the world. And my voice changes when I talk about that. My posture changes when I talk about that. And so just noticing for yourself the things that you have to do, make the list of them because they exist. But also then start watching and being aware, not judging, but being aware of the things that you enjoy doing. You're laughing. Go ahead.
I'm laughing because you're literally everything that's going through my head, you're voicing at the moment, where it's just everything I was going to say. I'm like, she's already covering it. There's, I don't know what I can add to this. And you're 100% right. It's physically visibly there when you are in a state of joy. People can look at you and they're like, you're just different today. Your energy's different. You're smiling more. Like the way you walk is bouncy or whatever. Right. So that's a great starting place of what was I doing when somebody told me that that's what I looked like. Yeah. I also go ahead.
You talked about earlier the space of being awake in the middle of the night, that people are awake in the middle of the night because they are so stressed about how do I pay bills and those kinds of things. And we have things that we can do when we feel that stress come in, that we don't have to sit and marinate in the stress. We can know that these things are happening, that they are out there, but we also can know that we are doing our very, very best if we are, right? And if we're not, say, okay, this is how I'm going to begin to shift this a little bit so that I don't find myself in this situation or as deeply in this situation again. And then I think also the other part about noticing when you are making gains, when you are moving towards your goals, and focusing on those and celebrating those gains, not looking at the gap. I think that was part of what Matthew McConaughey, I think, was talking about, is the reason why you're not happy is you're focusing on there's still so much further to go. And but when we stop and we look at the gain of how far we have come, and then we start celebrating that brings in a whole different level of energy that somehow buoys up anything else that I'm doing. And if it's different than gratitude, there's a level of gratitude that comes along with it. But to be in this space and to be celebrating the gains is almost like seeing, for me, my words, almost a circle of angels, and then I'm getting to be in that circle with them, and we're all just clapping together. We're all just so excited that good things are happening. And again, there can be an element of gratitude that goes along with that. But for me, there is a difference between me writing out the things that I'm grateful for and me stopping to celebrate things that have happened, that have work that I have done where I have seen gain, where I have moved closer to my goals.
Yeah. So just so you know, what you just said, believe it or not, and I don't know if I have told you this before, but back November 1st of 2023, I took a notebook that I have, and I've got a bunch of them that are all similar. And every morning I write down the date, and then I write AM gratitudes, and I write 3 things that I'm grateful for in the present moment. Because for me, it's always about presence, right? Present moment. And we'll touch on that in a second when we talk about the stress.
Right.
And then, I write 3 things I'm grateful for. So I bring myself back in the present moment of gratitude. Yes. And then I'll write, okay, universe, show me my best. Right. And then when I get done at the end of the day, I write PM wins, and I write down 3 things during the day that were wins for me, so that immediately I'm recognizing those wins, right? Like you talked about. And then after that, it's thank you, more please. And I just do it the next day, and I do it the next day. And I've done it every day for the most part since November 1st of last year. I told you this last year has been such a huge shift for me. And I think a lot of it comes from that.
Yes.
Coming back to that piece of the stress, what I've figured out, at least for me, and I think this holds true for most people, is you tend to live in stress and anxiety when you're either focused on things that have happened in the past that you can't change anymore, or you fixate on the future, on things that we don't know if they're going to happen, right? So when you're sitting around and you're so worried about either things that you can't change or things that you can't control yet, that's where all of that comes from. So if you, in your present moment, can say, look, my finances aren't exactly where I want them to be, but right now I'm working full time, and I figured out how to start maybe adding a side gig or to ask for a raise or whatever it is, to, like these things to kind of shore up that financial pillar in your life. And you can say, in this present moment, I'm doing absolutely everything I can. I'm giving my best in the present moment. Then that can help take away all of that, the rest of that, right? And it's hard at first to get to the place where you stay present, because it's not a natural state for a lot of people. We either have anxiety about the future or we have regret about the past, but that's where we spend most of our time. And when you were talking about the 5 people that you spend the most time with, the aggregate of those 5 people, right? And I love the fact that you 100% acknowledge they don't even have to be living. You don't have to actually know them, right? It could be, a speaker that you just love their message, and you listen to what they're saying, and you read their books, or, I know certain people that go back to the Stoics, and they're like, I love a lot of what you learn there, because a lot of the self-reliance, and it's your responsibility in a good way, because once you take full responsibility, then now nobody has the ability to control you, and you can create the life that you want, kind of stuff. Yeah. And I 100% agree that if you are actually dedicating your time to incorporating those 5 people into your life one way or another, it will elevate. It will, your identity will increase. You will level up. And so, like I was saying, I do the gratitude and the acknowledging the wins, because, like you said, the acknowledging the wins, I think, is one of the most important things. And it gets a bad rap sometimes because people think that you're being arrogant, or maybe you're self-centered, or you're narcissistic when you talk about those kind of things. But you said, you were surrounded by a circle of angels, and you're all celebrating, and you're all happy. For me, it's kind of like, it's a moment of pride in a healthy way, where I look back and I was like, it's like, I hike a lot. I spend a lot of time out on trails, and I love the analogy being, if I'm on a trail that has a lot of elevation gain, that is a harder trail, there's going to be times when my head is down. I'm focused on the in front of me, right? Making sure that I'm just next step, 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other. But at some point, I always want to make sure that I pause, and I turn around, and I look back, and I say, that's where I started. Yes. Look where I'm at right now.
Yes.
Right. And I still can see I have all of this to go to get to the top, but look what I've already done. Yes. Right. And it's so much easier to stay in that mindset of, I will get, this is going to happen, right? I will accomplish this, when you can look back and say, look how far I've already come.
Yes. And that space for me, when I have my head down and I'm watching my feet, it is about safety. It's about making sure that my feet are, because the steps aren't necessarily equal, right?
Mm.
And that's just so true about life as well. The next step that I need to take in my business is not necessarily the same size as the last three that I just took.
Yep.
And so being aware, being in the moment and watching and seeing, and then taking in also to the side what's going on. And is there a better path? Do I need to get off of the path that is in front of me and
Hmm.
maybe go a little bit around? Is that a better, safer way for me to get there? Maybe the book says take this road only, but I'm looking in the moment, I sense that I really need to take 3 steps off to the side. I'm thinking very specifically about a place when we were hiking in Kauai, and the road was absolutely here. And I was just like, it's too slick. We've had too much rain to stay on
Yeah.
it. I need to get off of this. I need to have my feet where there is other vegetation growing, where there are roots in the ground, and
Hmm.
that will help. And that's how I chose to go not only down to the water, but also then back up, right? And so I think that's an analogy also for life of things that we're working on. Yes, keep your head down, be safe in the process, but it's not cookie cutter. And each
No.
of us is an individual person, and we're going to have jumps and things that happen that are huge. And then we're also going to have spaces where things are pretty quiet. And it's okay to feel into the energy also when things are pretty quiet. It's not scary. It's just like we breathe in, we also breathe out, right?
Hmm.
We gift ourselves those spaces. And when spirit shows up in my world and says, it's time for you to breathe, my first response typically, this is just me, is, oh, but we've been working so hard on this project. And then after I do my, little bit of a whine, then I immediately move to, oh yeah, you can see the big picture. I'm
Hmm.
seeing just a little piece here. And okay, it is okay to take this space and to look at the panoramic view, right? To look at all of it, to take all of it in.
Oh man, I love that. Yeah, I love that. That was fantastic. 100. I couldn't agree more that we are not cookie cutter. That the pathway to
Mhm.
success or whatever you want to call it is not the same for everybody, and that's because not everybody has the same talents. In my opinion, that's how I think about it. Is that you can do things incredibly well that I probably will always struggle with, right?
Mm.
So the way that you approach something isn't necessarily going to be the way that I should approach something, right? We all have to walk that path according to whatever talents and gifts that we have that allow us to be most effective. And that's where I think I like to use the word effective,
Mhm.
right? In it. And so it's safety, effectiveness, right? It's this idea of how do we actually make this happen?
Yes.
Kind of the same thing, right? Um, and it took me a while to figure that out as well, because as I was trying to move into a higher identity and shift from a career where, like I said, accidental career serving drinks to people for 20 years that allowed me to make some decent money, have a lot of fun, and have some life experiences that I probably wouldn't have had in the corporate world, to a
Right.
whole different level. Because, I absolutely 100% love what I do, but I also understand the weight of what I do now, because
Yeah.
there's so much more gravity to when I'm teaching people the things that I'm teaching them, right? These concepts around personal finance and what you should be doing with your money to change the energy. I
Mhm.
think myself more of like a coach slash therapist around money than I would ever call myself an advisor.
Right.
Um, but that, and then seeing that I wasn't going to do that the same way that
Mhm.
everybody else around me was going to do it. I had to figure out what pieces I was going to take from what they were doing, add them
Right.
into my world, and then figure out how to put it all together to be successful on my own terms, right?
And to be authentic to yourself as well inside.
Hmm.
So, Corey, what is one tool that you frequently teach people about money and energy?
Oh, um, journaling, big time. One of the things once I start talking with somebody about, do you want to sit down? Do you want me to work with you, show you some of this stuff and help you build that plan? Um, a lot of times what we find is that people are spending money that just either to spend it or because they don't feel comfortable with it. There are a lot of uh, residual
Mhm.
mindsets and beliefs around money that they have in the back of
Mhm.
their head, right? And so if somebody's really in that space where they're like, I just can't seem, no matter how much money I make, I can't seem to get ahead, right? Like I'm always broke, even if I was making 6 figures. That's where I'm like, let's dig in on this, right? Like you're never going to hear this from another advisor, but I'm like, I want you to sit down with a notebook and I want you to kind of write out like, what are the first 3 or 4 feelings that come to you immediately when you think about money? Let's talk about that, right? And asking a lot of questions and just really getting down into the deeper layers of where's that come from.
Yeah.
But also I think that's the other piece, is that it's always tied to what do they want, and that's helping them get clarity on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people can say, oh, I just want to be financially stable, but that we don't know what that means.
What does it mean? Right. Yes.
That's a broad term, right? Like that, and that can mean 100 different things to 100 different people. So once we know what your end goal is, that's when we can say, all right, well, this is what we need to start thinking about. This is what we need to start shifting, right? And then also that, as it is due to the fact that money is energy, right? Just like everything else in your life.
Yes.
The way that you react to it is going to magnify, it's going to amplify whatever is going on. So if every time you get paid, and even if it's $1, you're like, oh, I'm so grateful that this dollar just hit my bank account. And I'm a money magnet. Money comes to me easily, flows to me effortlessly from multiple sources. And you tell yourself these things, right? And you start shifting that. Yes. What happens is the universe does what? It gives you more of.
Magnifies it.
Yeah, right. On the other hand, if you're like, man, I just got this paycheck and I'm so terrified that I'm not going to get to the next 2 weeks because I got to spend this and this and this. And it's all about, I'm grasping so tightly to every penny because letting go of it is just puts me in such a place of fear because I don't know how I'm going to replace it. Then all you're doing is bringing more of that scarcity and more of that mindset into your world. So, that's one of the things that we have to work a lot at the beginning on, is like, what is your relationship? How do you think about money? And then how do we start changing that?
Mm-hmm. I love this idea of journaling, just journaling the emotions around it, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, when I start thinking that there's only one way for something to happen, I try to get out in nature, and my eyes start looking for flowers and different kinds of leaves and different kinds of, right? And to see as many of those as I can. Because if I'm focused on there's only one way, and I get outside and I see, wow, there are a whole bunch of different kinds of flowers out there, different colors, different smells, different scents, same thing with the leaves, right? Mm-hmm. Look how abundant nature is. Can I move into a possibility of that there is more than one way that something can work out? And I have been watching that happen in my life recently, and have just sitting back in awe, absolutely sitting back in awe, just because I opened that door of saying it's not just one way. There are multiple ways that these things can happen, multiple ways that things can be encouraged and brought bigger and magnetized. And it has I'm truly in awe. It's just an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah. I tell myself every day, I've got, I'm one of those guys that on my mirror in my bathroom, got, some of my vision statements, some of my gratitude stuff, right. And whatnot. And every day it's, I am open to what my mind has not yet conceived. So when you talk about there's other ways for things to happen, to me, that's really kind of what it is I think to myself, and I would hope more and more people will start doing this of, I don't need to know how it's going to happen. I need to live in the place of the belief that it's going to happen, and then just keep moving forward, open to however it's going to show up. It's one of the things that when you start diving a little bit into quantum and reality, those kind of things, right? Of that every possible reality is actually already out there. It's just which one are you attracting to you because of the energy that you're living in and what you're putting out. Right. That's, for me, over this last year, that's been a big shift, is that I am living as the version of myself that is where I want to be every day, even if I don't have everything that person is going to have eventually will have. I don't have it yet. That's okay. Right. Because I'm still operating from the mindset and the identity and the gratitude and everything else that they will have when it's there. Right. And gratitude's a funny thing, because coming back to that, is that your mind and your body don't know the difference between reality and call it make-believe. Right. So if you're grateful that you have $1 million in the bank account, even if you don't have, your body doesn't know that you don't have $1 million in the bank account. So the gratitude of feeling that you already have that, instantly it changes the way that you're operating in the world and what's coming around you, right? What you're pulling towards you. So it's, it's not, I'm going to be so grateful when, it's, I'm going to be so grateful that I have.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes. It's already here.
Yep.
So good. So Corey, how do you set goals? How do you determine what your next goals are? You've come from food service. You are now serving people still. You have a servant's heart. That's been part of what you've taken from one place into the other.
Mm-hmm.
And as you look at what you are wanting to have happen in this next quarter, this next 6 months, how do you go about setting up your goals? Are you looking in the past and you're saying, okay, in the past, this happened in this amount of time. I'm going to try to make it happen in half the amount of time. Are you looking in terms of time? Are you looking in terms of connections with people? How do you go about, or is it just numbers on a wall? How do you make your goals?
Not gonna lie, numbers on the wall is a little bit of it, because again, as we talked about, your own house has to always be in order before you can help anybody else's, right? Whether that's emotionally or financially or spiritually, any of that, right? Because if you're living, in a, like they always say, people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? The idea being, if you don't have your stuff together, you probably shouldn't be talking about other people to other people about doing that. So there is that piece. But for me, the other way that I've been setting goals is really figuring out what is it that gets me excited when I think about being there, right? And a big piece of that right now is expanding my network and my reach to people in a couple of different ways. One is definitely on the financial services side, where I can sit down and help more people, right? Because a big part of the reason with the firm I'm with is we focus not only on, but pretty heavily on just average Americans, right? The people that wouldn't normally qualify for somebody at one of the other big firms. I'm not dragging anybody's name through the mud. I just, but a lot of times there's minimum amounts and things that most people can't meet, but that doesn't mean they don't want help and they don't deserve help.
Right.
That's where and that's why I get so excited. And like, that's what makes my heart sing, is when I'm able to sit with those people that nobody else wants to work with and show them this is the path forward. Here's the light at the end of the tunnel. Here's where you can start to breathe easier, right? And sleep at night and not have to stress so much. The other part is, I've kind of figured out that I love sharing these messages we're talking about right now. And so I'm trying to expand that other side of my network, is to be around more people that I can have these kind of conversations, because every time I have one of these, it just makes me more effective and it puts me in a better mood and it moves me forward as far as hopefully being able to get out there. And like I said, I still have one hand here being pulled by the people ahead of me, but it's like, I still want to make sure I've got that one hand down here that's helping bring other people along. And I am better at that the more that I am around people like you and some of the coaches that I've had and some of the really high achieving people that I get to interact with on a regular basis, just simply because I'm learning from them, and then I get to turn around and apply it, right?
Yes.
And then there are some things, like as I get a little bit older, there are just some things I'm like, I've never done this before, and and I want to, like, I travel to certain places or those kind of things, and it becomes I'm going to accomplish this, right? Before it would always be well, hopefully someday, and now it's this is this is an order of actually at the beginning of the year, January of this year, I sat down and literally wrote out in 7 different areas of my life of what I will accomplish in 2024, and just and then in the order, I was like, this is what I'm going to do first, this is what I'm going to do second, this is what I'm going to do third, right? And as I go along and I can tick them off, they're there. And it's, for me, I need that, because I also can have shiny coin syndrome or the squirrel brain every once in a while too, where it's I get distracted and I start paying attention to something over here, something over there, and I kind of lose track of where I was at before. But I really have moved away from what I think a lot of people traditionally think of as goals when you're setting goals, right? To me now, it's more of a how how does this make my life better, and how am I more fully enjoying my life
Yes.
with
Yeah.
this, as opposed to, what are the metrics, right? Did I meet with enough people this week? Have I got, enough money under management at this company, or those kind of things? They're all great because they're signs that I'm helping somebody and they're nice. I can look back and say that's another family helped by
Yes.
being able to see that.
Yes.
But I'm not driven by,
Mm-hmm.
the traditional dollar amount per year, or the zip code, or those kind of things.
Yeah. I love how you've talked about the importance of mentoring, not only mentoring other people and sharing what we have learned along the way, but also that space of reaching up and finding a mentor to work with. And the one piece that I would share with people is make sure that you're finding the mentor that's right for you at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
There are mentors out there that I want to work with, that I wanted to work with, and the timing wasn't right. When the time became right, it became easy and it was the right next step. And so, yes, you can have mentor names on the board if you want to as well.
Yeah, I
But if
love that.
Yeah, but if somebody's message used to resonate with you and it no longer resonates with you, that's okay as well. To be choosing the person that you want to work with in this time, because as you were sharing earlier, before we got on here and began recording, how much energy has been changing so rapidly recently, and I love what you said earlier about the fact, Corey, that what we are letting go of no longer aligns with where we are and where we're moving forward, and to not be ashamed of that,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to say that in a way that's filled with grace. We're not condemning the people or the situations or the zip code or anything at all. What
Yep.
we are saying is that we are in a different place right now, not better, not whatever. I just know that it's easier for me to have internal conversations because of the work that I have done. And so for that, I am so deeply grateful. For that, I'm a different and changed person. And I long for other people to come on this journey as well, because we can choose to move from being stressed to a place of being in our best. We can choose from a place from being thoughts, consistent internal conversations about lack and scarcity. We can shift that conversation to a place of seeing that there is abundance around us.
Mm-hmm.
We can from a place of saying nobody else in my family did this, and therefore I can't do this either because I don't have permission, to a place of saying, wait a minute, I have these gifts and that's permission enough. Now, how do we move forward and use these in the world?
Yeah.
So, Corey, as we're wrapping up this conversation, are there things that you'd like to reiterate, things that you want people to walk away from this conversation and have them hold on to?
Yeah, well, real quick on the
Yes.
mental piece, right? I love that, and I think about it kind of the same. I also am a big fan of therapy. I think a lot of people, I think pretty much everybody should be talking to somebody, whether you're in a great place or not a great place, all the time. But always with the person that's right, and especially for me on a mentor,
Yes.
the way I look at it is there has to be the right amount of tension, meaning that they're just far enough ahead of you that it's like a rubber band, right? And it's pulling you. But when they're so far ahead, the tension's too great and it won't hold. The rubber band will snap and nothing goes there. And then second, one thing that I've noticed in my life, and I finally kind of figured this out, is that I used to, as far as that change and not wanting to become the next version, right, is a lot of times I would fall very much in love with the version of myself that I had become to get through the next phase, right? It was like you put on the armor or whatever it was to prepare for the battle that you were getting ready to fight. But as soon as you got to the end of that battle, the version of you that got you there is not going to be the version of you that will take you through the next part of your journey. And so you have to, with love and gratitude, be able to say, thank you for everything you did to get me here. But it is now time for us to say goodbye. I will always appreciate, that version, but I have to move on. And, that was one of the biggest pieces that I finally learned, is that it's okay to do that, because I would be so attached to these versions as I kept growing my identity.
Wow.
And then I finally realized, I was like, they did what they were supposed to, and now it's time to step forward again, right?
Yes.
The only way past this through. So
So true. And no matter how incredible your kindergarten teacher was, chances are that they don't necessarily have, not necessarily, they might, but not necessarily have the skill set or the what you need when you're a senior in high school.
Yep.
And so it's not that we no longer love those people or aren't grateful for, but it's just a matter of that it's a new challenge. And so needing to have new skills and showing up in a different way as a new person to be able to do that.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better, that it's, you are always evolving, and you need to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that fit where you're at the time.
Absolutely.
But it's okay when, like you said, when it doesn't connect anymore or it doesn't resonate. Gracefully exit.
Corey, I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your really busy schedule to be here with us. And so we say thank you to the entire audience. We're grateful that you're here with us. Blessings.